Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the podcast where we explore what the world is talking about one trend at a time.
And today, we're looking at something that it feels both old and new, doesn't it? School phone bans. They're back in the headlines, really surging globally in 2025.
It really does feel like deja vu for anyone who's been following education trends. But you're right, the scale this time seems different, more intense maybe. Total bans being mandated, not just suggested.
Exactly. It's moved from individual school policies to state level or even national mandates in some places. And it really hits this nerve, this conflict point between focus in the classroom, personal freedom, safety concerns from parents, and just modern life, really.
Yeah, how do we prepare kids for a digital world by, well, remove the digital? Or is that the only way to get them to concentrate? It's a tough one.
It absolutely is.
So our goal today is to really unpack this. We want to dig into the history a bit. Where did this friction even start? Look at what's happening right now globally. Where are these bans actually rolling out?
And why? What are the big arguments? We need to hear from the supporters, the pros, and the critics, the cons, get into the evidence they're citing.
Definitely. And beyond just the policy, we want to explore the cultural side. How are people reacting online?
Yeah.
What does this whole debate tell us about maybe generational divides or our anxieties about technology?
Right. It's about getting that full picture so you can really understand the trend in its context. So let's start maybe with the policies themselves. Where are we seeing this happen?
Okay, but first let's just quickly touch on that history. As I said, it's not new. When did phones first become like a problem in schools?
Well, you've got to go back really to the late 90s, early 2000s, but it wasn't smartphones, obviously. It was pagers first. Remember those?
Oh, yeah, vaguely. Beepers.
Right. Then basic mobile phones, the Nokias and Motorola's. And the issue then was mostly just noise. Phones ringing, kids trying to text under the desk. It was seen as a simple disruption.
So the rules were pretty straightforward. Turn it off, keep it in your bag.
Pretty much. School by school, mostly just off and out of sight. It wasn't really about deep learning impact or mental health back then. It was, like you said, nuisance management.
When did that shift happen towards the concerns we hear now? Addiction, distraction, cyberbullying.
That really ramped up around, say, 2010 onwards. Smartphones became common, social media exploded on mobile. Suddenly, it wasn't just a phone, it was a portal to an entire social world available 24/7.
Right, and that changed the game completely.
It did. That's when the debate got more serious, moving beyond just classroom rules to actual policy discussions about cognitive load, mental well-being. But what makes 2025 stand out is this shift from schools reacting locally to government stepping in proactively, often with these wide-scale mandated bans. They're pointing to data on performance and mental health now.
Okay, so let's look at that global snapshot now in 2025. Where are these big proactive mandates happening? Give us some key examples.
Well, the one everyone points to as a kind of blueprint is France. They brought in a national ban back in 2018. It was pretty comprehensive.
National. Wow, how did that work?
Yeah, for all students up to age 15, so primary and junior high, essentially. It covers mobile phones, but also tablets, smartwatches, basically anything connected.
And the rule is just no phones at all during the school.
Pretty much. The idea is you leave it at home, or if you absolutely have to bring it for after school, it has to be turned off and locked away in a locker or maybe a central collection point. No access during school hours, including breaks.
That's a strong statement, basically saying these devices are fundamentally incompatible with learning for that age group.
That was the message, yes. A very clear ideological stance. They wanted to protect the school environment as a place for focus and real-world social interaction.
Okay, so France is the big national example. What about other places? You mentioned state-level actions. Australia.
Australia's a really interesting case. No single national ban, but several of the big states have implemented quite strict policies. New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, they've all moved towards bans, especially in primary schools, but extending into secondary too.
And what was the driver there? Similar to France or different reasons?
It seems a bit more driven by specific reported issues on the ground. Lots of feedback from teachers and parents about, yes, classroom distraction, but also a big focus on cyberbullying happening during school hours via phone.
So more about tackling observable problems, maybe, than a purely philosophical opposition to tech.
Arguably, yes. Trying to curb specific negative behaviors and outcomes they were seeing. Now contrast that with the US and the UK.
Right. Things seem much more messy there. Patchwork.
Extremely fragmented. There's no national policy, no federal mandate in the U.S., no UK-wide directive. It's all down to local authorities, school districts, sometimes even individual head teachers or principals.
So you could have one school with a total ban right next door to one that allows phones at lunch.
Absolutely. And that causes a lot of confusion, you can imagine, for students and parents moving between areas or even just comparing experiences.
What kind of approaches are we seeing in the US and UK then, within that patchwork?
It's the full spectrum. You've got schools implementing total bans, often using those lockable pouches like the Yonder system.
Ah, yes, I've heard about those. The phone goes in the pouch when you enter school, and you can't unlock it until you leave.
Exactly. It enforces the ban physically, takes the policing burden off teachers a bit, but it's still a big logistical thing to manage. Then you have other schools with regulated use policies. Maybe phones are okay in the hallways between classes or at lunchtime, but absolutely forbidden during lessons.
So a huge variation.
Huge. And that variety really reflects the different priorities and pressures felt by different school communities.
Okay, which brings us squarely to the core arguments. Why are schools and governments taking on these bans, whether total or partial, given the logistical headaches and pushback? What are the main pros from the supporters' perspective?
Well, number one, and you hear this constantly from teachers and administrators, is just cutting down on distraction. Simple as that.
It seems obvious, but is there evidence beyond anecdotes?
There is. Research shows that even just having a phone visible on the desk, even if it's off, can reduce your cognitive capacity. Your brain is partly monitoring it, waiting for it. So the argument is, remove the phone entirely, and you free up that mental bandwidth for learning, not just for the individual student, but for the whole class. It improves the collective focus.
Okay, reducing distraction. What's the next big argument?
That improved focus leads directly to better learning outcomes, better grades, basically.
And is there data to back that up? Because that's a big claim.
It's growing, but still debated. Some studies, particularly from the UK and other parts of Europe where bans have been in place longer, suggest a link. They've seen improvements in standardized test scores after phone bans were implemented.
Interesting. Any specific groups benefiting more?
Yes, often the data points towards lower achieving students seeing the biggest gains. The theory there is that students who struggle more with self-regulation or maybe have less support managing distractions at home benefit disproportionately when the playing field is leveled by removing the phone distraction for everyone.
So it could be seen as an equity measure in a way, protecting those most vulnerable to the distraction.
That's certainly one way supporters frame it. It helps close attention gaps.
Okay, focus, grades. What's the third main pillar for the pro-ban side?
The social environment. Specifically, reducing cyberbullying and related online conflicts during the school day.
How does the phone ban help there?
The thinking is that schools used to be a kind of safe haven, a break from social pressures. Smartphones broke that barrier down. Now, bullying, rumors, nasty comments, inappropriate sharing can all happen in real time, right there in the classroom or hallway, via the phone.
So the ban aims to restore that boundary.
Exactly. Take away the tool for instant, widespread digital conflict during school hours, and you force issues back into the physical space where hopefully they can be dealt with more directly or at least are contained. It's about reclaiming the school as a controlled, safer social environment.
Okay, those are pretty compelling arguments from an institutional point of view. Better focus, potential for better scores, safer social climate. But obviously there's huge pushback. Let's hear the cons. What are the main arguments from critics?
The biggest one, I think, revolves around education itself. Critics say these bans are fundamentally misguided because they deny students the chance to learn how to use technology responsibly.
The digital citizenship argument.
Precisely. The real-world college, jobs, civic life is full of technology. Phones are essential tools. If schools just ban them for 6-7 hours a day, instead of teaching kids how to manage them, how to filter information, how to balance connectivity with focus, aren't we just failing to prepare them?
So it's like we're avoiding the difficult task of teaching self-regulation with these powerful devices.
That's the core critique. It's seen as taking the easy way out. Instead of integrating this technology thoughtfully into education and teaching the necessary skills, we're just saying, nope, can't handle it, put it away. Critics argue that's setting kids up for failure later when the institutional boundaries disappear.
It's a powerful point. If you only ever use your phone in unstructured environments, how do you learn to use it productively?
Exactly. The second major criticism, and this one comes loud and clear from parents, is about logistics and safety.
Right, the emergency contact issue.
Yes, but it's broader than just emergencies sometimes. It's coordination. I'm going to be late picking you up. Practice is canceled. Did you remember your lunch money? Things like that.
The phone is the family coordination hub.
Absolutely. And then there's the big safety fear. Parents feel anxious, understandably in today's world, about not being able to reach their child instantly if something happens at school, or even just for peace of mind. The phone feels like a direct lifeline.
And the school saying, don't worry, we have a front office phone, doesn't really cut it for many parents.
For many, no. It feels indirect, slow, bureaucratic compared to that instant connection they're used to.
Yeah.
Taking away the phone feels like cutting a safety cord, replacing their personal immediate system with the school system, which they might not fully trust.
So we've got this real tension. Schools prioritizing the collective learning environment, trying to reduce distraction and bullying, parents prioritizing individual safety, communication, and maybe future skills.
And that tension really explains the different policies we see. A community that strongly values focus above all might go for a total yonder pouch ban. One more concerned about parental contact and digital skills might opt for regulated use during breaks, maybe combined with digital literacy classes. The policy choice often reveals the underlying priority. #tag2, internet theories and cultural interpretations.
Okay, let's shift from the official policies and arguments to how this actually plays out in the real world, especially online. When these bans are announced or enforced, what kind of reactions explode on social media?
Oh, it's instant. And usually very divided. You get this wave of posts, often from teachers, administrators, and some parents, breathing a sigh of relief. Finally some focus, or best decision our school ever made. They'll share articles, anecdotes about calmer classrooms, kids actually talking to each other at lunch.
So a lot of support, framing it as a positive step for education and well-being.
Definitely. It's portrayed as reclaiming the school day for learning and genuine social interaction. But then you get the other side.
The student reaction. And maybe parents who disagree.
Exactly. And from students, it often takes the form of, well, humor and rebellion. Memes explode.
Ah, the memes. Tell us about those. What are they typically making fun of?
It's often about the absurdity of trying to enforce the ban, mocking elaborate ways students try to hide their phones inside textbooks, down their socks, whatever. Or videos about timing bathroom breaks perfectly to check notifications. There are even jokes and tutorials sometimes about how to disable or bypass things like the yonder pouches, though I doubt those actually work often.
So the act of sneaking the phone, or even just talking about sneaking it, becomes a kind of badge of honor, a form of resistance.
Totally. It frames the ban not just as a rule, but as a challenge. It turns the phone into this forbidden object, a symbol of sticking it to the system, reclaiming a little bit of autonomy.
And that really highlights the generational gap you mentioned earlier, doesn't it? It's not just about a device.
It absolutely underscores it because for many adults, particularly those who didn't grow up with smartphones, the phone is still primarily seen as a tool, maybe useful, maybe distracting, but ultimately external, something you use.
Whereas for kids today?
For many young people, especially teenagers, the phone isn't just a tool, it's deeply integrated into their identity. It's their primary social space, their connection to friends, their way of expressing themselves, their access to information and trends. It's part of who they are.
So when you take it away, it's not like taking away a calculator. It feels more like cutting them off, isolating them.
That's often how it's described, a feeling of being disconnected from their world, their support network. Even if it's just for the school day, it can feel intensely isolating, not just inconvenient.
Wow. Yeah, that reframes the emotional impact significantly.
It really does. And this fundamental difference in perception fuels the deeper philosophical arguments about whether these bans are, progressive or actually quite regressive.
Let's dig into that. How do supporters argue that banning phones is actually a progressive move for schools?
The argument often centers on mental health and protection. They'd say, look, we know constant connectivity, social media algorithms, cyberbullying, these things are genuinely harmful, especially to developing minds. A progressive institution has a duty to protect students from these harms.
So the ban creates a kind of sanctuary, a necessary digital detox mandated by the school.
Exactly. It shields kids from the pressures of the online world, the need to be constantly available, the comparison culture. It allows them space to focus on learning and face-to-face relationships, protected from, frankly, the often predatory nature of the attention economy. It's framed as protecting their well-being.
Okay, I see the logic there. But what's the counter-argument? Why do critics call it regressive?
Critics say it's regressive because it avoids the real challenge. It's a head-in-the-sand approach. The world is digital. Instead of teaching students the crucial skills to navigate that world successfully, critical thinking, managing distractions, ethical online behavior, digital literacy, the school's just removing the tool.
Like banning books instead of teaching critical reading.
That's the kind of analogy they might use, yes. They argue it shows a failure of imagination, a lack of pedagogical innovation. It's easier to ban than to integrate and teach. And the result, they fear, is graduating students who are unprepared, maybe even digitally naive or overly dependent, once they leave the controlled school environment.
So a short-term fix that creates a long-term deficit in skills.
That's the fear. It ties into this broader theme of control versus freedom within institutions.
How does the phone ban symbolize that larger struggle over authority?
Well, think about what a school environment requires. It relies on directing attention, structuring time, controlling the flow of information to some extent. A smartphone in every pocket is a direct challenge to that. It's an instant escape route, a portal to anywhere, undermining the institution's ability to command focus.
So banning the phone is partly about the school reasserting its authority over the learning space, saying, here, this is what you need to focus on.
Absolutely. It's reclaiming control over the attention environment. But that control then bumps up against individual desires and particularly modern parenting norms.
Right, we touched on the safety anxiety. How does this debate reflect broader struggles for parents today?
It really taps into that tension between wanting to keep your kids safe, which today often translates to being in constant contact and needing to foster their independence and respect the school's rules and structure.
It's the digital tether idea again.
Yeah. And it's not just emergencies. Modern family life is complicated. Coordinating pickups, after-school activities, separated parents, managing schedules. The phone is often the logistical linchpin. Banning it throws a real wrench into the works for many families.
It forces reliance back onto older systems, calling the office, waiting for announcements that feel slow and inadequate compared to a quick text.
Exactly. It demands a level of trust in the institution's communication systems that might feel uncomfortable for parents accustomed to that direct, immediate link. It highlights this anxiety about losing control, losing that immediate connection in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable. The policy basically says, trust us, and for some parents that's a hard ask when it comes to their child's minute-to-minute status.
Okay, so we've got the policies, the pros and cons, the cultural reactions. Let's try to pull this together now. Looking at the bigger picture, what are the potential long-term societal implications if this trend of phone bans continues or becomes the norm?
I think the key thing to wrestle with is that effectiveness versus cost calculation we talked about. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that the bans do work in the short term. Let's say they reduce distractions, maybe nudge test scores up a bit, cut down on bullying incidents during school hours.
Okay, granting those potential immediate benefits.
Does that success come at too high a price? Is the cost, the lost opportunity to explicitly teach digital citizenship, self-management, critical engagement with technology within a structured environment ultimately more damaging in the long run?
It's the avoidance versus mastery dilemma again. We get a quieter classroom today, but maybe less capable digital citizens tomorrow.
That's the core concern from an educational perspective. If students only ever learn to manage or fail to manage their devices outside of any guidance, are we just delaying the problem, pushing it out of the school's sight but not actually solving it? It might even worsen when they hit college or the workplace with underdeveloped self-regulation skills.
Let's drill down on cyberbullying specifically. Does banning the phone in school actually stop bullying or just relocate it?
That's a major critique. Experts argue that the underlying issues, the social dynamics, the aggression, the reasons why bullying happens don't disappear just because the phone is locked away from 9 to 3.
So the conflict just waits until school's out.
Exactly. It might even intensify because it's been suppressed all day. The ban might make the school environment feel safer by removing visible digital incidents, but it doesn't address the root cause. Some argue it might even be counterproductive.
How so?
Well, if phones were allowed in a regulated way, maybe teachers or counselors could actually observe some of these digital interactions, intervene, use them as teachable moments about online behavior, conflict resolution, empathy. Banning it removes that possibility entirely.
So the ban becomes a blunt instrument trying to fix a complex social problem, potentially missing opportunities for actual education on the issue.
That's the argument. It's treating the symptom, the device, rather than the underlying social dynamics.
Looking even broader, what does this whole global push for phone bans tell us about our society's relationship with screens in focus right now?
I think it signals a deep societal anxiety. There's a widespread feeling, not just in schools, that we're losing the battle for attention, that screens are overwhelming us. The school ban becomes a kind of focal point for this anxiety.
Almost like a collective admission that we as adults are struggling too, so we're imposing rules on kids that maybe we wish we could follow ourselves.
There's definitely an element of that potential hypocrisy, perhaps. It's easier to regulate children's environments than our own. The school is being positioned or forced into acting as this firewall, this protected space, because focus feels so eroded everywhere else.
So it's not just an education policy, it's part of a larger cultural struggle over attention in the digital age. Back to that control versus freedom idea.
Absolutely. The ban is an attempt to reclaim cognitive space, to assert the value of focused attention against the constant pull of the digital stream. The school becomes the institution tasked with enforcing that boundary, perhaps because families and individuals find it so difficult.
So for you listening, as you think through all this, it really forces you to weigh competing values, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You have to decide what you prioritize more. Is it the immediate, tangible benefit of potentially calmer classrooms and maybe improved short-term academic focus? Or is it the longer-term goal of developing digitally fluent, responsible, autonomous individuals who can navigate a complex technological world effectively, even if that means grappling with distraction during their education?
It's a fundamental choice about what preparation for the future really looks like.
Yeah.
And it pits the needs of the orderly classroom against the needs and perceived rights of the individual's safety, communication, digital integration.
There's no easy answer, and where you land likely depends on your own experiences, values, and vision for education's role in society. #outro.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, from national policies in France and state rules in Australia to the yonder pouches in the US and UK, the memes, the generational divides, and these deep questions about control, focus, and preparing kids for the future.
It's clear that this debate about school phone bans is about so much more than just the devices themselves. It touches on core values: distraction versus identity, control versus freedom, safety versus independence.
And maybe the key takeaway is that tension between short-term gains in focus and the long-term development of digital competence.
A really critical trade-off to consider.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a final question to mull over. Given how deeply phones are now woven into young people's social lives and even their sense of self, are these policy debates focusing too much on the object, the phone, and not enough on the underlying reasons why it feels so essential? Are we missing a chance to address the social pressures and anxieties that make constant connection feel non-negotiable for so many kids?
Perhaps the real work isn't just about managing the device, but about building resilience and healthier relationships with technology from the ground up.
Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us for this look into the resurgence of school phone bans.
We hope it gave you plenty to consider.
Next time on Trending Unpacked, we're shifting gears quite a bit. We'll be diving into the history, the Steins, the Lederhosen, exploring the cultural phenomenon and traditions of Oktoberfest.
Should be a fun one. We look forward to having you with us then.
Until next time, stay curious.